Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Black Sheep and Bad Apples.
Ow, ow.
Yeah. I'm your host, Lauren O'Brien. This is the podcast where we write stuff fairly to basically sober, and we go ahead and deliver it in various states of inebriance. I wanted to announce to our listeners tonight that after next week, we're going to be doing a special 3 weeks of podcasts brought to you by my lovely co-hosts, one of which is not here. I'm not going anywhere, guys. I'm just shifting some focus, being just a benevolent dictator,
Never mind.
and allowing others to talk about the subject of which, that they find so passionate. And so, speaking of lovely co-hosts, we are missing a Sam tonight, wherever he is, but we do have a Mr. Dacey.
Ooh, it's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too, baby. How you feeling?
Feeling good.
Yeah, you nervous tonight? What are your feelings on how tonight's episode's gonna go?
I'm thinking we're talking about like chupacabra hairstyles. That's what I'm going in. Like all my research that I prepared this week is for that.
Well, I'm not really hip to the cosmology, I think is the word for it, of chupacabras. So
It's a simple blowout with a fade.
Yeah, honestly,
it looks good. It's feathery, like it's like conditioned.
And if we're at it, we might as well make chupacabras seem a little bit more friendly and give them braids. So yeah,
goat sucker could be a positive thing. We don't know.
We don't know. But you know who might know? The guy here, the one, the only producer man of Fourth Corner, Sean Hill. Air horn, air horn, air horn. How you doing, baby?
Oh, pretty decent.
So, other than chupacabra hairstyles, which has been talked about already, what do you think tonight is going to consist of? Do you have an emotion that you think you're going to be feeling it by the end of the night? Like, what are your predictions?
I usually just bring an empty bottle, and I just stuff all the emotions in there.
I've been wondering why you keep jamming your fingers and getting them stuck into these bottles.
Yeah, I let it come out later and stuff and digest it a little. It's a little easier to swallow, if you will.
Oh, you're Irish Catholic too? All right.
Nutty Protestant. Buck up, Holmes.
Uh-oh, we got a bus bomb somewhere.
Hey, watch yourself. Well, since we've made our predictions, I also have a prediction.
Uh-oh.
How do you,
I'm going to put my odds on your prediction.
Yeah, I truly don't know how you guys are going to feel about this one. It's honestly an episode that would be really whimsical if it wasn't like something that it is, like an event that happened in history. So it's
hard for me
really
to
weird.
decide how I think I might feel because we've gone from folklore and school shooters, politics. We've strayed away from religion, I believe.
Yeah, I think we've tried to. We've probably mentioned it a lot, though.
Yeah.
No, last week we talked about religions.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about cults.
Yeah, so
it's a religion to someone.
It's a wide array of feelings that are possible. It's not like, I think I'm going to be a little bit more upset than usual.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to I might be really happy. I might have to lay on the couch for a second and think out loud. I don't.
Yeah, to put a metaphor to that, it's kind of like blindfolding yourself and then throwing a dart at 30 feet into a dartboard, and like a good, solid, feel-good episode is the fucking bullseye. Everywhere you're like, I don't know where it's gonna hit. I know where it's probably not gonna hit.
After you sat on a tire swing where your friend just spun you 10 times.
Well, let's get started then. Floods are a terrifying reality to many people in the world. The causes of them are obvious in many cases: hurricanes and typhoons, as well as an inundation of rain near rivers and streams. These are all among the lists of the usual suspects. Interestingly enough, flooding occurs across every single U.S. state and territory. And that's according to the National Severe Storms Laboratory, which works directly under and with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA. These organizations work to provide forecasts and predictions of weather patterns and to issue advisories, warnings, and evacuation orders when needed. Water from a flash flood can move as fast as 2.7 meters per second. That's about 6.8 miles per hour.
It's like jogging speed.
Yeah, just about. Yeah, so you could, in theory, outrun one if you could run indefinitely and didn't have obstacles.
Yeah.
Yeah. But water can flood in a variety of ways. Ironically named NOLA, because I just talked about NOLA. But yeah, Nola Taylor Red wrote an article for Live Science entitled, quote, Flood Facts, Types of Flooding, Floods in History. In the article, Nola describes the 4 basic types of flooding that can occur. The one most people think about when they hear the word flood is kind of the water like getting to the edge of the dam or the edge of the riverbank or whatever and overflowing. And that's called overbank flooding. Kind of, explains itself. But then there's flash flooding where, an aquatic event will happen someplace and the water will collect downstream and move through usually dry areas and just like run really quickly through there with what's the word? You've got no clue that it's going to happen. So those are 2. A third one is called ice jam flooding, which I've never lived in an area that happened to this, but it's super interesting.
Ice jam?
Yeah,
ice jam.
No clue what that could possibly be.
Yeah. So it's like
it sounds like a really cool movie.
Yeah. Sylvester Stallone in Ice Jam.
Or like it's the cold Space Jam.
That's what I was like.
Yeah, where it's like, they've got Santa Claus in the movie. That's what's going on in that one. Yeah, Ice Jam.
And Cuba Gooding Jr.
Ice
Hell
tea.
yeah. He would look really good in a Santa hat.
Yeah.
I feel like I've seen him in one before, but I can't put my finger on it.
Radio.
Yeah, I don't remember that vividly. You're probably right, though.
No.
But anyway, ice jams are, again, a really cool type of flooding. That, in my opinion, obviously, they're terrible for the people who have to get through them. But in cold areas where, like, the ice thaws enough for water to begin to flowing, the ice chunks will pile up downstream at, like, a bottleneck, at, like, a choke point. And it actually causes the river to rise as it has to work its way around the ice. And so it actually creates an overbank flood via creating a dam of ice. So that's an ice jam.
Yeah, because the ice gets jammed up.
It gets all jammed up in there, and it stops it up. It's like, I'm not going to go there.
Yes.
But the last and not least type of flooding is coastal flooding. It's predominantly caused by storm surges and hurricanes and tsunamis and storms and stuff like that. There was an interesting tidbit that I found before we move on about the hurricanes that I found really interesting. And we're going to quote from...
that George Bush doesn't care about black people?
No, actually, he doesn't believe in hurricanes.
Yeah.
That's why, yeah.
Huh.
No, but quoting Miss Nola from Live Science in their website, quote, in a hurricane, 9 out of 10 deaths are caused not by wind, but by fast-moving storm surge, end quote. I really didn't think about that. I thought it was always like flying pieces of shrapnel coming through windows or like traffic jams, like something really apocalyptic seeming, But I've lived in Northern California my whole life, so...
Yeah, I immediately think of, like, the Cow and Twister.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, and it just... Yeah, it surprised me that 9 out of 10 are because people are like, I'm not going anywhere, I'm staying right here. And then,
Oh, you're surprised of Americans' ability to stand our ground?
I'm actually surprised at our ability to stay at home when we're not supposed to, and then go out when we're not supposed to. Like, we will just fucking rebel to anything, dude. It is amazing.
I can't argue
that.
Yeah. I've definitely been in both circumstances, for sure.
Yeah, and it's like, now that people...
Like, this is a mandated evacuation. And I was like, and you can leave then.
I'm staying.
I don't know what you want to hear, Marshall.
His name is just the dude on the corner. His name is Marshall. Like, it's not like a...
It was really just my neighbor.
Marshall Henderson.
Yeah, and so it's really interesting because, like, thanks to advancements in Doppler radar atmospheric analysis and, like, satellites and all that like, really cool technology, science, NASA shit, we have at worst like a few days of a head start when it comes to a flood like that, to like a hurricane or a coastal flood. But what if there was no head start? There was like no technology for it. And what if there was no like ice jams, like something you could predict? What happens when the wall of water comes from out of nowhere?
Ooh.
What happens when 2 million gallons of this water spontaneously burst out from the earth into a busy industrial area? And what happens when all 2 million gallons are of a sweet liquid? Tonight, the topic of discussion will be the 1919 Great Molasses Flood of Boston!
Whoa!
Yeah!
Molasses. Weird.
What a twist, right?
We were just talking about swimming in Jello earlier.
Yeah.
I think molasses would be a way different circumstance.
Oh no, yeah, that would be.
We're going to hear a lot about that tonight, so...
See, I thought you were bringing up that we were going to talk about the flood of Santa Barbara.
No, but that sounds very interesting.
That's
too.
it's a dam that broke, and like a bunch of people died. Like no,
Jesus
yeah,
Christ.
the guy like he either. I think he went to jail, but then like got out of jail and had to pay like a couple $100,000 in fines or something like that.
Fuck. What did he
It's
do?
Really interesting. He never went to engineering school.
Oh, fuck.
He was just like, yeah, I could do this.
That is going to relate so much tonight.
Yeah, like you just fail upwards in America.
So, we're going to kind of ease into this a little bit with this next part. Within 5 minutes of the failure of this tank, 2 blocks of the north end of Boston had become inundated with molasses. There was 3 feet deep molasses everywhere after the initial wave. Carriages, cars, buildings were destroyed in the wake of the destructive flood. The liquid sugar oozed into every crack and crevice, stuck to everything it touched, and left the Boston harbor a brown tint when the cleanup began and after it ended for a long time. The source of this molasses came from the Purity Distilling Company.
How big was that tank?
We're about to get into it. So in order to produce alcohol, the Purity Distilling Company became a subsidiary of the United States Industrial Alcohol Company in 1917. So about 2 years before this incident. The tank used to store the molasses was built a few years before, in 1915. I am terrible with numbers. The alcohol was particularly useful, according to Britannic Encyclopedia, for making munitions and allegedly rum before the Prohibition. But we'll see later how that kind of plays into the story. At 50 feet tall, so it's 5 stories tall, 90 feet in diameter, with a capacity of 2.5 million gallons.
What? Why?
2.3 million gallons of molasses, so just slightly under the full tank, was being held in the storage tank before the rupture. It was the tallest object in that area of Boston at the time.
There's no need for that.
Now,
have 3 tanks. Have 3 like separated.
Yeah, and
Jesus.
we're gonna talk a little. Holy fuck! This story got way more interesting after the flood.
It's the size matters type of thing.
Well, and like
the guy went home and was like, yeah, you like that gallon of molasses you got there? He's like, yeah, I do like it. He's like, do you? And like points to his 2.5 million gallon.
I got a shit. Yeah, it was just like a dick measuring contest to see who could build the biggest tank. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But the reason I thought this was a really interesting story was because at my work we have to deal with a lot of like bulk molasses, so we have to like drain it into containers to sell, and so it's really frustrating when you forget about molasses, because again, it's slow as shit. It's like notoriously so. It's really frustrating to forget about it and have some spill up on the ground, and like a single gallon of it makes a huge mess. And so when I heard about this story, I was like, I've gone home with just molasses stuck in my hair and my beard, on my clothes. I can't touch anything
That's
own.
why you have dreads.
I've got to wash everything after I get home, and so it's really frustrating. Even like just the amount that got on my clothes, which was nowhere near a gallon. Oh. And so 2.3 million gallons really intrigued me when I started reading about this.
How slow do you think that wave was?
We're gonna get into this. Let me continue.
Okay.
So according to Britannica, the tank had been a problem immediately after it was built. when it first went into use, the tank would leak damn near constantly and
Like-
emit rumbling noises.
Hey, what about this leak? Fill it. No, but it's leak. Fill it.
In studying the
Just
disaster,
use the molasses as putty.
Yeah. It'll fill it. Yeah, it'll stop its own leaks. It's molasses.
it's like the opposite of anything that you could want to dry as a glue. So you hit it with a blowtorch and the leak gets worse. So anyway, the tank leaked just constantly and would always make like groaning noises when it was filled because it was filled from the bottom. In studying the disaster later, this was like around the late part of the 2010s. Ronald Mayfield, who worked with the University of Harvard to re-examine the event from a scientific standpoint, said that the walls of the tank were about half the strength that they should have been in order for the density of the liquid for which they were made. And actually, that the type of steel that it was made with was, in his words, quote, too brittle, end quote. The steel used to create the tank was a form of steel known to fracture, and in fact was the same steel used to make the Titanic.
Oh, I was just, as soon as you were saying that, I was thinking about that story.
Yeah, it's God, so many stories touch on ones. It always trips me up.
Well, it also all just comes down to like everyone's just trying to save a couple fucking pennies. Like,
and we'll see that these people, they just didn't want to take any time on it.
yeah.
Yeah. Later criticism would come out in the legal cases brought forth that the engineers who built the tank most likely had known about the weaknesses of the steel at the time. So we can already see that there's like a little bit of a case that people were shitting. Quote, the type of steel used for the tank was too brittle because it contained a low amount of the chemical element manganese. Manganese? Yeah. Making it more likely to crack. And that's according to the Boston Globe article entitled, quote, nearly a century later, structural flaw in molasses tank revealed. So, Mayville also noted about the steel to manganese ratio. He said, quote, the steel conforms to the standards of the time, but now it's known that you need to have a higher ratio.
Like, yeah, so you remember how the tank broke in Brooklyn? Yeah, add some more.
So it's like if you build a skyscraper, and at that point the like biggest plane that they have is like a certain size, so they only build it to those measurements of that building, and they never think that there's gonna be a bigger plane.
Yeah.
And then you have like.
Well, at that point, they were like...
Steel fuel won't melt. You steel...
you end up with bigger planes, essentially, yeah. Yeah, and there's still some controversy among the people who study the science behind the disaster, particularly because most seem to disagree with the theory that was presented by some people, that there was a buildup of CO2, carbon dioxide, and that buildup created enough pressure to have the steel rivets just fail, which was actually the legal argument presented by the USIA and Purity Distilling Company, which we're going to talk about a little bit later because they didn't really have a good defense, which we'll later learn. It was like, oh yeah, it must have been this or probably that. There was no like evidence for it. So.
Well, I mean, how do you find evidence in 2.5 million gallons of molasses? Like, I assume that amount of liquid isn't like having a gallon, you know what I mean? Or those little things that maybe happen with a gallon of molasses, let's say, are so minuscule that you don't really even notice that maybe like every time you open it, a little gas goes off, you know, or something like that because of what the sugars are creating or something like that. If you have 2.5 million gallons, that little tiny bit turns into a lot, you know, or something. And I just mean that in like a generalization,
well,
you know, like
in the molasses at the place I work is like basically just sugar. I don't know the technical amount of water that's in it, but I would imagine that this stuff, which was being processed, you know, in 1919, it basically, you know, midpoint of the industrial age, I imagine that it might have had a lot more water than our tanks at work do.
Did this big tank have like a turn? What do you call it? Like a kind of like a big mixing bowl? Did it keep it moving? Do you know?
From what that was the next point that I was going to bring up, because also our tanks at work at the top have a vent that you're supposed to open before you start using it. And so what it does is it also allows...
Carb.
And yeah, it carbs it and allows anything that's in there trying to escape, and anything that's trying to get in, to get in.
Yeah.
And so, no, this didn't have a giant mixer, and we don't have one at work because molasses, fuck trying to pour it, but imagine trying to get a drill, like just a mixing drill. You know?
I was just thinking like some big industrial
That's
tanks
always
like this.
moving slowly.
They always have
around.
like
like
just
a cement
two.
truck.
Yeah, they just have two things in it that move real slow, and it's just to keep the liquid, the whole thing, just kind of not sitting the whole time,
Yeah.
like all the time. You know, like a screensaver for your computer, so you're not just the same image. Totally.
You're just smarter than that whole industrial age, and it's not even like that. I'm making a joke. It's that we are like that. They just never even thought of that. Like that's why we learn from our mistakes.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
for sure. It's definitely a time of like, can we build it? I don't know. We could try.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Will it work? I'm sure.
That's
You know, like, and
Let's
that
throw
was
a
about.
bunch of sheep in there and see if they survive. Like,
Yeah.
fuck it, why not?
fuck it. That's the weirdest thing about it too, is that like it's just like a sugary bog, or like a La Brea tar pits.
I keep thinking about the animals.
Yeah. Anyway, so it could be that as World War I raged on in Europe and then came to a close, the container was built quite hastily with the builders ignoring safety precautions because they made
Everyone wants their molasses.
well, they made alcohol, and alcohol was
Everyone
really
wants their
good for
alcohol.
munitions making, from what I understand. So yeah, they really wanted to cash in on that government contract.
People want to
and-
make munitions when they're.
Yeah, and so they might have built this
Alcohol.
really hastily because of that. It might have been due to like an extreme pressure to build the tank quickly, but regardless of the reasons, nobody went back after construction and reinforced the tank.
Oh.
Mayville also furthers this idea by positing that the tank had been used around 30 times in the 3 years since its construction and the event itself, going a little further to even note that it was only ever near full capacity at 4 times. Ever. Okay.
They filled it once when they made it, once after they made it, sold it to a dude who tried it, and then they got it.
We're gonna
Well, you have
talk.
to
We're gonna
build
talk
it
about
in
how
the
the tank got
building,
built
don't you?
earlier, by the way,
Oh,
or a
yeah.
little later, because it's. Whew. And actually, I mentioned it later in the podcast as well. But if you guys here are interested,
You already did?
No, I'm mentioning it later.
Oh, okay.
Dark Tide by Stephen Puwalo, I believe his name is. I'll come do it later. Really good book about this whole event, and he goes into so much more detail than I'm ever going to get into. So if you guys really are fascinated by this, I would strongly recommend reading his book. The parts that I could find online that were like excerpts were like one-page excerpts, and then just like the one page would make you cry. Like it was so
Yeah.
fucking.
Has
it's
anyone turned
great
into a
writing.
graphic novel yet? Because I will get to it then.
We should do a Netflix miniseries about this.
Oh yeah, they'll say yes.
Hell yeah, they will.
Yeah,
There's no way they couldn't.
they've been asking me for a project, so.
Yeah, I know. You and the Netflix guys are pretty close.
Well, no, it's just like me, like kind of playing with myself in front of the camera, and it only goes to their private account. It doesn't go up on Netflix, but like we're still tight. Like,
Hell yeah.
Next, they get
I have
my
an-
content, but they just won't post it.
I have an
Jesus
OnlyFans
Christ.
account with just the Netflix guys.
Gee, oh my god. I think never mind. I don't know anything about OnlyFans. I know it's cool. I support sex workers, so.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're going to
Thank
talk next about the temperature theory. The placement of the tank had almost been doomed before it had started. The site was perfect, but it was owned by another company. And after like a long thing that we're going to talk about later, the tank had fucking gone up. The site was perfect and was only like 200 feet away from the harbor. This meant that production could be increased, and this allowed the company to more easily access the storage tanks on the boats that brought molasses in from Cuba. The project, as mentioned earlier, was successful with a few small issues like the leaking of molasses from the edges of the container.
And people just trying to like lick it up, and they're like, "Oh, molasses!" Just like licking the side of the tank.
So rather than testing it vigorously for the heavy liquid, the company had filled the tank with water as a test. The problem with this, among the others we'll be talking about later, is that a gallon of molasses weighs nearly 12 pounds. Whereas a gallon of water weighs 2/3 that, coming in slightly more than 8 pounds. So obviously, if one was using the tank for molasses, the structural integrity test fell short for any rigorous safety precautions or procedures you were trying to perform. Even though the tank was inadequately tested and had, upon filling, obvious leaks, the tank was put to use. The tank was so notorious for leaking that local kids during their noontime break would head up to it with cups and sticks to collect the sweet ooze from the bottom of it.
I was right.
It sounds like a rich dude paid for the tank before he got it, if that makes sense. So then they were like, yeah, here's your tank. And he was like, and they like shuffled off, and he was like, "Oh, sons of bitches!
Yeah.
It leaks a little bit, but I already, like they said no refunds."
Yeah, and the structural integrity, it held enough for the Purity Distilling Company to continue on with their business. The tank was, like, as it was used, the managers and workers overseeing the tank were told to ignore their concerns about the leaks and keep on working. And this, above all else, I'm going to posit this as my editorial in this whole thing. I mean, the whole podcast is an editorial, but I'm putting this here. This, above all else, I would say, is one of the biggest contributing factors to this story. People warned their upper echelons, and the upper echelons ignored them. And if you're asking yourselves why, we're going to fucking get to that. I think I've said that 6 times in this episode already, guys. So just pace it down a little bit. Stick with the story. Like, be a part of it.
Oh.
Yeah, so, again, this is still talking about the temperature part of it. An important thing for the next part of our story is that molasses, as we've talked about, is heavy. And it's also extremely viscous. In order for molasses to be made easier to transfer and to just transport it, it was oftentimes heated before, like, pushing all that content into the tank, like into the ship that it was going to depart in, and it made it less viscous and like easier to move.
Yeah, I was also trying to picture that. You said the tank was filled from the bottom.
That's from what I understand. I could be wrong about
I'm just
that.
like,
but
I've filled water tanks and big water tanks where you push the water in from the bottom spout. That's the outspout at the bottom, but you just reverse flow and it fills the tank up from the bottom up. Or I guess if you have 2 tanks, one that's above the other, you can hook it and it will fill the other tank by pushing up because the levels of the water balance out type of deal. But molasses, I'm like, you would think naturally you'd want to fill from the top, because trying to push up that much molasses, there's a lot of weight you're pushing against, and that pump, like,
and
I'm doing the smart thing again.
And
I'm just like, your pump's going to burn out in like one time. Every time you deliver molasses, it's just going to be like, and the pump broke.
Well, and what I'm picturing too is that, like, if you have to push the extra energy to put it into the top of the tank, you might be just doing, like, having to subvert gravity. But then I was thinking about, like you have to have a pump that's strong enough to go up those 5 stories to dump into the top.
But
Excuse me. But then the other version is that, like, now you've
to
got
be
a pump
stronger.
pumping from the bottom that
got-
has to push 2 million gallons worth of molasses the fuck out of the way. So with the average Caribbean temperatures only varying about 10 degrees from like 70 to 80 degrees, this is just on average between winter and summer, we can assume that the molasses had been significantly warmer than the chilly but sunny 40-degree Fahrenheit weather the people of Boston were enjoying on this particular day. And all of that had to be said to look at thermal expansion. The tank had already been filled with some molasses, and there's kind of like mixed records, like really hard documentation on how much it was full. But we know it was full. And all of that had been sitting in the Boston wintry air. We can assume the molasses was slightly colder, like in the tank, than around the 40-degree Boston air, as 2 nights before, the temperature had gotten somewhere near 2 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah. And so when the ship, the Miliero, brought another 600,000 gallons of the less viscous, warmer molasses from Cuba to fill the tank, it's possible that the warm molasses from the Caribbean meeting the cold molasses in Boston caused both of these two to mix, and it caused thermal expansion. The resulting expansion of the molasses could be, and is sometimes documented as, the cause of the tank failure. The expansion could also be because of CO2 that had been released as the molasses naturally fermented. In the end, no matter the reason, there was a massive surge of a tar-like, sugary death across Boston's North End. And fucking the company was the cause of it. So, the rupture. Do you guys have any thoughts about this before we continue on?
I mean, I'm just picturing like women with babies running down the street with like a molasses flood coming, and my visuals are just going off, and I'm also trying to imagine how big the building was around this tank?
Oh, it wasn't a building. It was a freestanding tank.
Oh, it's just a
With
tank
like,
outside.
yeah, with like
like on
Boston,
the block?
Boston Harbor, like just slightly north of it, and Commercial Wharf slightly northeast of it. So it stood at like the edge of the North End district.
Gotcha.
And then there was like a street that ran like in front of it. There was some apartment buildings across the street from it. There was a fire station just slightly northeast of it. So it's like a really busy, bustling area. There's a lot of goings on. There's people traveling. It's the commercial street or avenue.
But they were just like, put this tank here, and they just
it's a really bustling part of town, and so there's also like a couple blocks away, you could find like really fancy stores where you can go and get candies, which was a thing that I read where one guy was like, yeah, I was just going to get candy and everything smelled of molasses.
Yeah, see that's the like. They're still all though from Boston, so I'm kind of all right with it. I mean, we'll see. But
well, and if you look at it, obviously the sugar has done something to the water there because they've got like Boston Dynamics there, and people were there just building crazy smart robots. And who's to stop
Harvard?
Like Harvard. And who's to stop those robots from going and puncturing more molasses tanks? You know what? In fact,
so they still have molasses tanks there.
No, I don't know.
Okay.
I doubt they do in that little area. It's changed a lot since then. And you know what else has changed?
Now there's just racists there.
The fact that we have not changed.
Oh,
that's changed because we are changing, which makes us having changed from not changing, and what we're changing into is a commercial break.
Chain.
Up to commercial break.
Oh,
that was a good one, right? Hey, I'm Lauren O'Brien, host of Black Sheep and Bad Apples. If you like what you're hearing, please give us a like, leave us a comment, and share, and let us know what you think.
This week's episode of Black Sheep and Bad Apples was brought to you by cryptozoologists everywhere. Cryptozoologists. Facts.
Hayfields is also clean. From farmyards to outhouses, barnyards to bedpans.
Our highly skilled team of shit technicians are specially trained to handle all your fecal phenomena.
We'll be there to wipe your property clean.
Hayfields is also clean. We literally take your shit.
Samsung, the only way I sing.
Brought to you by marine biologists who try to speak to dolphins. We'll get there. Chocolate Jesus. He makes me feel so good inside.
Condones de piel de humano. Cuando quieres sentir todo real.
And now back to a little bit more of Black Sheep and Bad Apples.
And we're back. How are you guys feeling so far?
Feel like we're getting in a sticky situation here.
Ooh, clever.
I've been waiting to use that one since we started.
I want to make more jokes, but I feel like bad shit's about to happen.
Yeah, and like I really like this would be a really funny. We talked about it a little bit during the break, but it would be a really, really funny thing if what I'm about to talk about didn't happen. Like if this was just like a freak meltdown at like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory and like sugar was just melting super funny, super cool. Like I'd love it.
Did you see
Very
the
good.
Oompa Loompas face down and the molasses just floating away?
I was imagining they've got special mops for the molasses, so they're just like draining into like the little the mop like water collector things with the little squeegee on it.
Oh, I was picturing it like a dead girl floating in a river.
Oh, very morbid.
That's what I was going to say. That's why they have the canals going through, is so they, whenever something kind of spills or whatever, they just sweep it into the channel and it goes and gets reprocessed. And
So,
wait, are all Bostonians Oompa Loompas?
I mean, we could argue the North End where this all happened.
Because they're half a person, so
Yeah.
I'm for this to like.
Well, I was gonna say
stick.
just because it's still rumored that you can smell the scent of molasses on really
Ooh.
sunny days in the North End.
So I imagine if it covered the streets 3 feet deep. There's people that use molasses out here on the dirt for driveways. You take
Wait, what?
So instead of using, well, like the old farmers and stuff used to just take their crankcase oil out of their tractors and everything else and dump it all over the roads, like when you oil the roads to keep the dust down and all that type of stuff.
Okay.
So in like older days, which obviously is not very environmentally friendly, when the tractors had an oil change, all this, the cars, all that type of stuff, you just dumped it out in the driveway because it packs and tightens down the driveway like doing tar on a roadway type of deal. It's a bunch of oil that binds all the dirt together and makes it more hard packed and stuff like that. Well, the environmentally friendly way, if you will, is to take molasses and you just dilute it a little bit, and then you spray it out over the road while all the sugars bind with all the gravel and the dirt, and it makes it'll make a driveway of a store or something like that that's just got a dirt driveway or a gravel driveway. It'll make it a lot more hard pack and everything, and it's all the sugar grabbing everything. So I was just imagining Boston streets were probably like sealed, or at least those blocks were like no maintenance needed to happen on those streets for the next like 30 years. Yeah, it's just like so I can imagine if it got in and filled all the little cracks and crevices, all the little gaps and stuff like that, the roadway was sealed. Well, that stuff, 3 feet of it probably got down in those cracks a ways, and so I wouldn't doubt it. There's still some like sugar on a hot day. You can you walk down that block and
Just
you're like,
scoop it off of a.
it smells really sweet over here. you
I
know?
would be licking buildings like lollipops. So it'd be like the little fat kid, just be like, ooh, lick it, lick, lick.
So we're next going to talk about the rupture itself.
Sexy.
The rupture occurred on January 15th, 1919, at around 12:30 p.m. This is very important because January 15th in Boston is pretty fucking cold, as we talked about earlier. And it also happened around noon on a sunny day, which was about a 40-degree day, from what I'm told, in American degrees. And so, as I also mentioned, the tank was 50 feet tall, so like 5 stories-ish, and 90 feet wide. With molasses being 40% more dense than water, this creates what's called a lot of potential fucking energy. So when the tank failed, it caused all of this potential energy, because gravity is pushing down on all this molasses. It caused all this potential energy to turn into kinetic energy, which I learned in something we'll talk about a little later. And this was all just generated by the sheer weight of it. And so the technical term for this, which we're going to learn here in a few minutes, is called a gravity current. And you can see evidences in like avalanches and lava flows. And like some people reported this wave as being between 15 and 40 feet tall.
Jesus.
And the wave was documented as being around 160 to 250 feet from, like, think about it like the epicenter of an earthquake. Now imagine the epicenter where the tank was, like 250 feet around it. So like 2 straight blocks of north end of Boston. It spilled out to the north end of the Boston Harbor. Yeah.
Hey, Bobby, grab your surfboard. This is the time we've been waiting for.
Yeah, and just so we're clear, and 15 feet is the lower and the most probable end of how big this initial wave was when it came out.
Jesus.
So even if it's not the maximum, it's still terrifying.
Yeah.
I'm 6'4". That is like,
you don't want to be in front of that.
that's a
and
little
stuff,
less than 3 of me. So it's fucking terrifying. Yeah, and some of the evidence pointing towards the fact that it was only like 15 feet tall was that you could only see the high water mark, if you will. Like some stories talked about how you could see like molasses stuck on 2nd-story windows. So that's like evidence as to why they think that it was probably towards the lower end of the 15 to 40 feet wave, but we'll never really
But I
know.
mean, it would go through an alley and kind of go up in certain areas, and then like kind of it would filter in places and rise up. And
So the speed at which this molasses moved was an estimated and later scientifically verified to be accurate of 35 miles per hour.
yeah, not so slow now.
As an example, the fastest runner ever documented, Usain Bolt, ran just short of 28 miles per hour. It exemplifies how quickly the stage turned from a lovely midwinter's day into a horrible, sticky tragedy.
So you're saying America is still like the leader of like the fastest thing?
We're number one.
Woo!
But this also shows how quickly inundated the area around the tank was when the molasses spilled into it. It created such force that some witness reports of the event said that the tank created a long rumbling noise like that of a passing train. And upon structural failure, a quote, thunderclap bang. Yeah. And then there was also documentation of like machine gun popping emanated from it, from like the rivets.
That's what I was going to say. I imagine that some rivets just were like ping, 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 just started going out the seams. And there was probably like, I mean, at that point, if it's like a loud thunder bang type of deal, that means, I'm just imagining that means like steel split.
Yeah.
So
Well,
like
that's
it
funny, 'cause
tore
you
somewhere.
said thunder pop bang, and I immediately thought of a twerking ass, but like same like just split and just like really rocking it.
Yeah.
So
Exactly,
all these loud noises, though, they're contrasted by some different accounts of the event, with one survivor noting that it didn't make a fucking sound.
Oh, that's even scarier, actually.
And others still swear the tank made a fucking just like low groaning noise before failing.
Oh no!
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so what I want to do is I want to show a video that kind of talks about how some of these fucking brilliant geniuses in colleges figured out how fast this wave traveled. So we're going to take a short little break to watch this video about fluid dynamics of molasses. And I'll be
Sweet.
posting a link
I was gonna
up.
watch this anyway. I'm glad
Yeah,
I'm watching
and
it.
so if you at home want to watch it, now's the time to pause. I think it's important to look at this video in the studio just because it really provides evidence towards the true speed at which the molasses could have moved. The fucking fluid dynamics nerds at fucking Harvard analyzed reports that the molasses reached up to 35 miles per hour, which is like 55K. And that's what we're going to be looking at in the video. So you listening, we're going to be starting around 1:27. Watch the whole thing, though. It's pretty interesting.
And what's the video called?
The video, let me look, actually.
is this the one on Brazzers that you sent me?
No, that's a different one.
Oh, all right,
This
never
one
mind.
is the physics of the Boston Molasses Flood by, what is that? fyfluiddynamics on YouTube. So we're going to take a little break, and we'll see you on the other side.
Bow.
This podcast was brought to you by Fourth Corner, a no pants party since 2016.
Yeah. So some of that information might have been redundant to you guys listening when you guys are in the studio, but I thought it was a really good thing to just add to kind of bolster the whole, like the whole story. It was
Good to see the pictures of it.
Yeah, I
too.
like
Yeah.
that there was a lot of photography of it and stuff.
Yeah, and the thing that I really enjoyed was the graphic where they showed that it was filled basically to the top, which created this much kinetic energy, and then as it left, it pushed all that, potential energy, and as the potential energy went down, it pushed the kinetic energy out. Because like the pulling of the cup from on top of the molasses is a really good example of like what happened here.
Yeah.
Like this thing just boom, just bleh, just out across everything. Yeah, and so this black, sweet, sludgy mess poured out of the tank and spread across Boston's north end. 21 people, as you may have heard, were later found dead, with another 150 or so injured.
Meh.
So after carrying away vehicles, carriages, pushing a fire station from its foundation, and even smashing into the Boston Elevated Railway's Atlantic Avenue structure, this thing smashed into a steel girder and basically almost collapsed the whole damn thing. So it was strong. The wave of molasses gradually spread to a depth of about like 2 or 3 feet. The Boston Globe described people being, quote, picked up by a rush of air and hurled many feet, end quote. Still, others had debris flung at them from the force of the eruption, the expansion rate of the molasses itself, or the wind sometimes. Like, sometimes you'll hear stories about how the wind from it, like, did this. So, like, I don't know how to tell the story properly.
I imagine anybody working on or around the tank was just devastated. Like, you know, you're like, oh, what's this right here? Tink,
that's
tink,
our next.
Boom, and it's just like
that's our next section, actually.
Hey.
So this sticky sugar covered everything for nearly 2 blocks as it came to settle. More unfortunately, as you guys may have heard, unless you listeners didn't watch the video for whatever reason, I don't know. But more unfortunately, as the liquid spread out on the 40-degree day, it became more viscous as it cooled. It hardened. And as it did so, it trapped dogs, horses, and people in this tar-like ooze, an ooze from which there was no escape. Effectively, those who had survived the initial flash flood of molasses were quickly in more trouble as the liquid hardened.
One of them became Fat Joker, right?
I don't have evidence to prove that, but I really feel like
you have to get a super villain from that scenario.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there was.
Yeah.
We'll find it. It's got to be like the 1919 Molasses villain. It's like one of those B villains.
His name's like Sugar Man.
Yeah, exactly.
He like oozes molasses from his fingertip, but obviously it's slow. So like it takes him a while to make like a magic ball to shoot across the room.
That
he could like throw his foot from diabetes at you.
Wow, that comic's probably worth a lot of money though.
It's got really dark. So a report from the Boston Globe at the time said this, quote, molasses waist deep covered the street and swirled and bubbled about the wreckage. Here and there, a struggle to form. Whether it was animal or human was impossible to tell. Only an upheaval, a thrashing about in sticky mass showed where any life was. Horses died like so many flies on sticky fly paper. The more they struggled, the deeper in the mess they were ensnared. Human beings, men and women, suffered likewise.
You got to barbecue those horses up, right?
They've got to be delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you just...
Why do you think Elmer's actually tastes good? It's got that sugar.
Oh my God.
Horse is good. Like you go up to like up to Canada, you can find some like butchers that like do it up right, and they'll have like a completely like cut up, spaced out horse as soon as you walk into the butcher's place.
I've never thought of the idea of actually eating a horse. Like, I don't know what that would look like. Do you eat horse steak? Is that a thing?
You could.
Yeah.
Yeah, just...
I think it's more of like a...
I don't know if I'd eat
like
a horse
roast.
burger. But yeah, I feel like a lot of roast items because they got
especially
like...
You want to know
rump,
it's a
dude.
good part of the... a good cut of the
it's like
animal.
they definitely got like hindquarters and a rump and roast areas and
That's
stuff.
what I'm saying.
I don't know I don't know about like horse ribs. You
So
know,
what we should do is we should soak horses in molasses.
For science.
I like the way that you... Yeah.
and then
That's
put
a
it,
good disclaimer.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a disclaimer, but it's not that we're doing anything illegal.
It's going to be delicious.
No, it's for
For
science.
science.
For science. So, as noted earlier, excuse me, 150 people were injured and 21 lost their lives during this flood. The unimaginable devastation took weeks to clean up. One of the victims, Robert Burnett, why am I messing up my words tonight? Robert Burnett was sitting across the street from the tank when it failed. BostonGlobe.com has an article. God damn it. Boston.com has an article called, quote, What People Saw and Felt in the First Moments of Boston's Deadly Great Molasses Flood, end quote. This is what we're gonna be referencing from a lot here in the next section. And in that article, the Boston Globe, or they cite the Boston Globe, and the Globe got an interview with Burnett at the time where he said he and his family were eating dinner, which is really odd for it being like noon 30, but whatever. Not going to judge him for being wrong.
No. That's when dinner.
What we're here for.
That's when dinner is. Supper is at like 5 or 6.
Okay, so at the time dinner was at 1 o'clock or so?
My grandparents did this a lot. You had breakfast, lunch, dinner, and supper.
Okay.
And lunch was more or less like what we call brunch. Dinner was at like noon 30 to 2, and supper was at 5 to 6.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah,
I'm
'cause
down for another meal in the day.
And I just thought it was really weird that he would be saying that he was eating dinner, because I usually think that is
Well,
like
and
that's a nighttime.
a
thing,
lot of
but-
those people get up at like 4 or 5, 3 in the morning, something like
That's
that.
fair.
So breakfast is way early.
Yeah, these people are 101 years old now, and I have to remember that.
Yeah.
So Burnett describes the events of the Boston Globe like what he experienced, and he explains it to them like this, quote, "There was a rumble, no roar or explosion. I thought it was an elevated train until I heard a swish as if a wind was rushing. Then it became dark. I looked out the windows and saw a great black wave coming. It didn't rush. It just rolled slowly, it seemed, like the side of a mountain falling into space. Of course it came quickly, but we all had a chance to jump up and run before the windows began to crack. And then it poured molasses." And he continues. The article continues, rather. He and his family followed their first impulses to run to the street, but when they opened the door to the hall of their building, they saw molasses had already reached the top of the 14-step flight of stairs.
Jeez.
They ran instead to the roof of the building. And I'm going to repeat this a couple times, but like the whole event took place in less than 5 minutes. But it would take the following weeks and months before some bodies would be found and for the cleanup to finish. Pascale Iantosca and Maria D'Estasio, I hope I'm pronouncing both of those correctly.
Yeah, that was 100% right.
Hell yeah. Nailed it. Both of these were 10 years old, and they were the youngest victims. Several different accounts have placed the two near the base of the tank when it ruptured. And there's conflicting stories about what they were doing there. And some stories state that the kids were down there like gathering wood near the base of the tank, which is hard to believe.
Come on, boss. Let me just sweep up around the tank, make some nickels.
Exactly. But considering it was like an industrial area, there's possibility that like maybe they had like miscellaneous wood just laying around. Like I don't know.
He was siphoning some. He was poking holes in it, like drilling it out like a tree out in the woods.
Yeah, and again, I read a couple different accounts, so I don't really know what they were doing. I know that there's two of them. So the first one was that they were gathering wood in this like industrial area.
They were probably popping a couple rivets out, like he said. They were like, "Yo, pop a rivet out," and it just started like leaking something. They're like, "Free molasses."
Well, you guys,
yeah.
the other account states that the reason they might have been there is that the fucking tank just constantly leaked. It was notorious for constantly leaking, and so the theory is that like a bunch of kids would go up there and with cups and like sticks and shit and fucking collect all the syrup. So like maybe they were there, like maybe not. They didn't even have to pop rivets, which we're gonna get into later.
That's what I would be
That's my
there with just
favorite
like
part
a
of the
straight
episode.
up like
Mason.
6-pack of pancakes and butter. And I'm just
Yeah.
like putting it on the tank. Just like, no, I just need a little bit more. Like,
Yeah. And so regardless of the reason that they were there, they were there. According to Dark Tide, the Great Boston Flood of 1919, written by Stephen Puleo. That's the name I fucked up earlier. Stephen Puleo.
Puleo.
Giuseppe, Pascal's father, and one of the 10-year-olds that was here, was watching him from across the street in his apartment when the tank broke and his son was swept into the thick tidal wave. After
Rough.
hours of searching, Giuseppe, as Puleo wrote in Dark Tide, quote, exhausted and disconsolate, he trudged up the dark stairs and stepped into the house. Maria, his wife, was waiting for him. Her eyes rimmed red from crying. Neither of them spoke. He had come home alone, and that said everything.
Huh.
Yeah.
Dark times.
Yeah, that's rough.
Um,
I keep thinking about all like stepping and just bringing that into your house and just be like molasses everywhere and you just be like, everything would be sticky for
Yeah.
so long.
Yeah.
I guess for him you wouldn't really care because you got other shit on your mind. But
Yeah. It got fucking everywhere, as I note later in this episode. It was literally like the disaster was a disaster, but like imagine washing fucking clothes because you get a lot of your water. Like
Yeah.
if you're a poor person, you might go down to the river and just wash your clothes in that. That had molasses in it for a long time. So like your clothes got naturally starched. Yeah, like the whole thing is just terrible.
there's got to be somebody who benefited, like we were talking about, like a shaved ice company or like something
just-
where it like came in and they're like, wait, I got some blue flavoring. Put this together. We got a snow cone and like
I know that a lot of people, or at least one person in a business, thought that they really like got the good end of it, but it doesn't.
It's like
turn
the
out
local department store that sold mops or something like that. It would just like flourish. It was like just some old schmuck there.
Yeah, I'm sure
Just like way old, and finally he was like, "I'm telling you, Susan, this business is gonna make it, and we'll retire."
they're
And
just
he's like
like the
90, and then
people-
that happens, and
the
they like.
steel, coal, and tool making industry really profited from it.
That's what like the shovel industry really benefited from the gold mine. That was like the people who really made the money.
Exactly.
It's like people making masks now. There was like mom and pop just making like pants for firefighters or the rescue workers and stuff and that, because every day, or the cleanup crew. It's like, here's your suit, throw it away at the end of the day because there's no way you're going to use it tomorrow.
Just burn it.
like, okay, here's your one, like scrubs for nurses, but they just like somebody was just like, yep, and here's your molasses uniform for the day.
Ooh, yeah, I kind of would like a tearaway clothes society where like we're just like, look, we'll
Great
just
band name.
wear these like painters suits like while we're out in the day, but as soon as we close the doors, you just rip the painter suit off, and it's just like socially acceptable to just always be naked at your home.
Interesting.
I was thinking, or a shoemaker. There's got to be like a local shoemaker they were just like, yo, we're going to need like 500 pairs of shoes every day for the next 2 months. And he was like, well, hot damn.
We're gonna need shoes that can survive sticky bullshit.
Yeah, or there's a really rare collectible type of shoe that you'll never see, but there was like 500 of them made. That's just like the molasses shoe because it somehow is like...
Yeah, you can look on eBay now and find like a shoe covered in molasses from the Boston 1919 flood.
Well, I was thinking like repels molasses, like one local shoemaker made
I don't think
one.
anything can repel molasses.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
Maria DeStasio and her brother Antonio reportedly had been walking home from school, and they did this during lunchtime. And they were walking home from school when the lunch tank, when the tank failed. Antonio was caught up by the molasses and fell to his hands and knees, but he was rescued and treated for his injuries. According to the Boston Globe, who interviews Antonio shortly after, this is what he says, quote, Mary, ran towards the tank. I ran the other way, but molasses was up around my knees and threw me down, end quote.
Classic situation. Male, female, taking their lunch break, just walking home from school, and the boy can't save the woman. He gets like, oh, and he trips and falls and gets caught in the molasses. Well, the girl's like, oh yeah, and totally fine.
Well,
Like, how does that always work? Where it's like the dude that's supposed to save the girl ends up tripping up and like.
She should have saved him.
Well, and I don't understand the rationale. Like, well, and maybe it was looked at as not a big deal by a 10-year-old desiring fucking sugar. Like, apparently they were underneath the tank at the time. Maybe they were already just fucking jacked up on sugar.
Yeah.
And so, like, when the tank... Because, like, I just can't picture why somebody in their right mind would run towards a tidal wave coming at you.
I get the Benny Hill music in my head, and then once it gets to the tidal wave, it slows down a bunch, like a Jordan Peele scary movie.
No, but that's on like it's classic. It's like the girl runs towards the tank. That's probably what tripped up the guy and got him because he was like, no, don't run that way. And somehow she comes out on like no scratches, no bruises.
Oh, no, she definitely did not. A day later, the Boston Globe printed this, quote, sad, hardened workers lifted her bruised little body onto a stretcher and silently bore it across North End Park into a waiting ambulance.
Gotcha.
So she's cool.
If she was running towards the sugar because she desired it, she got what she wanted
Then,
and
yeah,
died.
Oh, yeah!
Yeah.
Never mind,
But
I
she's not good.
Oh, that's what happened. The Kool-Aid Man bust out of it.
It just,
And then he's like, oh, shit.
somebody
Wrong
was drinking
spot.
the water downstream and was like, shit. I'm gonna put this in apple juice. I bet it's delicious. And that's how it was made. So
That's the superhero that came out of this.
Do
It's the Kool-Aid Man.
Yeah.
I've created a monster. George Leahy was a 38-year-old firefighter assigned to Engine 31, and this is just directly northeast of where the tank was. And he was sitting in the firehouse station just 150 feet or so away from the tank when it collapsed. The massive wave of treacle, which is a word that I learned, it just means syrup, had pushed its way into the firehouse. collapsing the building on Leahy. Members of the Boston Fire Department spent hours chopping and digging through the sticky rubble to try and excavate and rescue their colleague. The Globe again describes the discovery of Leahy as such. Quote, "It was nearly 4 hours after the disaster that the work of these men was finished. And it was then when the body of George Leahy, third engineer on the fireboard, was taken from under heavy timbers, held down by the piano and pool table, still warm, but with life extinct." End quote.
Oh.
Leahy had drowned in the molasses after becoming too tired. Like, he was resisting the molasses and kind of his energy faded. And yeah. And
Imagine
so,
treading molasses.
With the piano and pool table on top of you.
yeah. There's not like a whole lot of room that you got there.
Which I think is great. Let me rephrase that. Not that he died from that.
Jesus Christ.
No.
Holy shit.
I found my Christmas card.
No, that there was a piano and a pool table in the fire hall.
Oh, yeah, they were having fun. It's
Like,
Boston.
they
This
were-
is right. Yeah, this is right before Prohibition too. So
That's on like
people are
so.
getting buck.
That's on like when the firefighters
Congress
are
is-
just waiting for fires. They're up there playing pool and like jamming on the
yeah,
piano.
you're
and, like,
sneaking a couple flappers up there. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
They're like, oh shit, we got a call. Better go. We'll be back in a whatever, you know.
You're like, yo, this girl's totally willing to show her knees. Like, totally bringing her up, bro.
So I was like, you're like under a bunch of timber, a piano and a pool table, and I'm like, wait, what? In a firehouse? Like, did the salon above it come through? You know, like.
Does he have a bottle of liquor in his
Yes.
hands? Like, what was going on? So almost immediately across the street from the tank was 6 Cops Hill Terrace. It's a real name. Didn't make it up. Where Martin Cloherty? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. But Cloherty was reported as having a midday nap. This is his story. His 65-year-old mother, his sister, and brother were in the house as well when the flood occurred. We're going to again quote from the Boston...
This would be my story right here.
Yeah, we're going to again quote from the Boston.com article about the survivor sensations. Quote, "The force of the tank's collapse pulled their buildings out into the street, smashing it against the railroad line. His mother, Bridget Cloherty, was crushed in the wreckage." And this is them quoting him. "I was in bed on the 3rd floor of my house when I heard a deep rumble," Martin Cloherty told the Globe. "I was asleep and the rumble did not wake me thoroughly. The first impression I had... I shouldn't be doing an accent to this. The first impression that I had was that something unusual had happened when I awoke in several feet of molasses. It didn't dawn on me that that it was molasses I was in. I thought I was overboard." He was able to find his sister, but couldn't find either his mother or brother in the debris. His brother Stephen was rescued later, but then later died in an asylum from what the family says was a trauma from the flood.
Wow.
And that's an end quote. So Stephen had actually died from tuberculosis a few years after the event, but they often dedicate him as another death
gotcha,
of the
yeah.
flood because of it could have been trauma, it could have been a bunch of different things. So the final person found, putting the final death toll at 21, was Cesar Nicolo. He was a 32-year-old Italian immigrant working in Boston as an expressman. That's in quotes. And that's just like fancy words for a wagon driver. And he had been at the site of the disaster. It's not known where he was at the time, but we can assume that he was on the side that faced the Boston Harbor because Nicolo was spotted in the area shortly before the tank disaster, and then was pushed out to sea. His wife Josie had visited the site of the spill every day since January 15th. His body wasn't found until May 12th, nearly 4 months later. His body had been carried out to sea by the force of the dark tide, and he was found underneath the commercial wharf and was counted as the last and final victim of the sugary mass. This was 4 months later.
Oh.
Luckily, though, help arrives basically immediately. The people of the North End didn't have to wait very long at all. Docked nearby was a training ship of the Massachusetts Nautical School, the USS Nantucket, where 116 sailors under the direction of Lieutenant Commander H.J. Copeland were first on the scene to help rescue those lost, and they were there to help mitigate damages and injuries, and later to help clean the mess up. Later, the Boston police, Army personnel, and Red Cross workers arrived, and after that, the scene was pretty fucking intense. On the scene, rescuers were greeted with knee-high molasses as they worked to rescue survivors from the tar pit, as well as look for anyone who may still be trapped. Meanwhile, onlookers were being kept from the scene by a cordon while rescuers worked. A half a mile away from the scene, a makeshift hospital was being set up at the Haymarket Relief Station. Some nurses waded into the mess, determined to find survivors, while others treated the injured. Keeping the workers fed and the victims warm was an exhausting part of the rescue. And this is kind of this is the part of the story that's like in between the results, the end point, how many died and the tank actually failing. And so there's a lot that happens. And I cut a bunch of this stuff out. There's so many stories that aren't included in this, but it's
like the cleanup or like
yeah, we're about to get into some of that.
I just imagine you said the Red Cross was there, like a natural disaster, and they're setting up their camp and doing all their thing. And like the picture I just picture is like the Red Cross like comes up with a blanket and puts it around you, you know, because you were just in a fire and
but you're sticky
and it's 40 degrees outside and everything else, and it's Boston. You're like, oh no, and you're like,
ow,
you're kind of in shock.
Oh, no.
But yeah, they wrap a blanket around you, and now you're stuck to this like wool blanket thing or whatever and stuff. And they're like, oh,
I guess this is
damn,
yours
like,
now.
Yeah, there you go. Like, how many blankets do they go through on that?
Yeah.
Paid.
That is a good question. So the Suffolk County medical examiner, the county examiner of the area, George McGrave, at the time, arrived to find that several bodies had already been pulled from the disaster. He remarked that the bodies looked, quote, as though covered in heavy oilskins, eyes and ears, mouths and noses filled, end quote.
Ooh.
Yeah, rough.
Yeah.
So many of the rescue workers pushed through the night, but it was made even more arduous by, as we saw in the video, the heavy sap that clung to them as they worked, but it was also cooling throughout the night. So soon workers were covered head to toe in blood and that sweet muck. Meanwhile, the molasses spread as people marched into and out of the debris to find and rescue individuals. So much molasses was present that soon the hospitals were being inundated by it. Today, History Today's article, quote, a sticky tragedy, end quote, discusses the situation. I'm going to cough real quick.
Brought to you by that cough.
The whole hospital reeked of molasses. It was on the floors, on the walls. The nurses were covered with it, even in their hair. At the destroyed city stables, police shot injured horses trapped in the molasses. The rescue continued for days. Bodies were often so covered by a brown glaze that they could not be seen. And as mentioned earlier, this event happened around noon 30, and as the rescue crews arrived and begun their rescue and cleanup operations, the sun went down, and so, like, all of this is just getting more and more complicated and convoluted and sticky, and, yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more about the rest of the thing here in...
There was one guy there that loved it. He was it was just this sticky mess that he was having a blast in.
Yeah, like he didn't get like injured by it. It just like touched his shoes.
This
and
is
he was
weird.
Like, this oil tastes delicious.
Everything's sweet.
Yeah. Anyway, we're going to go and do a little break while we break into my local store and steal some molasses to drink. So I encourage all of you listeners to, during this break, go to your local store, smash molasses on the ground, take some of that sweet, glassy liquid, put it on your tongue, and enjoy this break.
Loot, riot, and pillage. That's it, though. Don't do the other one.
Hancock, Humphreys, Pinfield and Pike Cartography Company has been making scientifically accurate maps since 2005, and business is booming. Since introducing our three-dimensional pop-up book maps, we've been able to pioneer a new way to bring you the comfort, nostalgia, and smell of your grandfather's old atlases. Come see the world in 3 awesome dimensions with Hancock, Humphreys, Pinfield and Pike Cartography Company's Old Granddad's 3-dimensional virgin paper pop-up atlas. Volumes 1 through 15,000.
We all know banana bread is fucking hell yeah, bro.
Hell yeah, bro!
It's been established as the best kind of bread and banana by the Bread and Banana Bureau.
Bro.
We thought that since banana bread, what we affectionately refer to as BB, is so important, we'd set up banana bread stands by bringing BB to your work.
Oh, hell yeah.
By bringing banana bread to better your busted break time, we're making sure that every customer gets to have a rad time. When you get paid not that much money for doing a whole lot of work, bro, call the Bananas Berries Bros Bread Co.
Bananas are berries. Why is it bananas? And
Yeah, but
it's like
the company is called
Bro,
Bananas
it's
and
like-
Berries
it's like
Bros
Oak
Bread.
and Wood Company.
No,
Like,
but it's called the Bananas and Bros Berries.
I'm
It's called the
just-
Bananas and Berries Bros Bread Co.
Bros.
It doesn't
And
make-
I'm
it's
just
not, bro.
I'm just
It's
saying,
not
bros.
con-
I'm just saying,
it
like
doesn't make-
Bros! Stop the violence!
Sorry, dude.
We can all agree the banana bread at work is like, hell yeah, bro.
Hell yeah, bro. The Bananas and Berries Bros Bread Co.
Wopsie was still on. Drivers Against Drunk Drummers, funded by Mothers of Motorcyclists. Thanks, Mom and Dad.
AFAD, the Anti-Federalists Against Defamation. Grab our brochure at your local library for more information.
The United Antifa Calamari Liberation Front. Visit us at uaclf.inc.
Come on down to the Whispering Pines Trailer Park Food Court, where you'll find
Wonton pickup. Available in quarter ton, half ton, wonton. Come pick up your wontons at Wonton pickup.
or come visit me down here at Pickin' Pulled Pork. Whether you need some carbs or a carburetor, we got it here at Pickin' Pulled Pork.
Or Sid's Seafood and Shake Shack in the driveway next to Dave's Place, Unit 347.
Whispering Pines Trailer Park Food Court. Smack down on some delicious grub. Closed once a week for Monday Night Raw.
Located off of Highway 76, Beale Street, exit 47, left at the Texaco, then a right, a half a mile past the Bill Murray Memorial Park next to the bridge. If you hit the clam, you've gone too far. Thank you for listening, and now back to a little bit more of Black Sheep and Bad Apples.
All right, we're back. And I want to ask you, gentlemen, how the story's settling with you as we go into this. Is it good feelings, or is it like... Because, again, it'd be funny if the kids...
Yeah. It was like, I still got these very illuminated, imaginative, like, funny Disney pictures in my head of like Disney made a movie about this, and it's like, you know, you never see somebody die. They just kind of puff into smoke.
They get stuck in like the villain.
They're
Can't
just
do
no
its
longer
evil mission or
available
whatever.
to be in the movie,
Mhm.
but you don't see death and horror and stuff. And then that's where it's like, oh yeah, but kids died, and you're like, well, could we keep it fun that like everybody just got stuck and it was like laughing about it, even though it was like, okay, one guy lost an eye, and now he's got a patch because the rivet hit him in the eye. And
Yeah, it's like a G-rated movie where like the main villain gets hurt and, you know, dies in heavy air quotes, but then he comes back in like a neck brace and like a leg cast, and he's got crutches, and he's like, "You cursed Disney characters."
damn you guys, you got me, and everything is like cool and kosher, and you're like, yeah, there was a lot of like building damage, and everybody got together and repaired, and we came back, and that was just, yeah, cool, but
It
Let's
feels
all
like that.
stick together.
Yeah.
yeah,
I
they're making
think
lighthearted jokes about
yeah.
everything and stuff, because
Which is funny because we're about to get into the cleanup process.
Nice.
So yeah.
Well, I just keep like my mind will start seeing the bodies floating in this sticky mass, and then it like goes over, and I see the Kool-Aid Man emerge from it.
Well-
and like I just think like sometimes you got to crack a couple eggs.
Jesus Christ. Nobody's floating in molasses.
Slowly drudging in it.
Yeah, like you-
face down.
Well, and that's the fucked up thing about this story is that it's basically just really sweet quicksand. So you're like, oh, it's fun and games. It tastes like sugar. And no, it's not.
would you say that was... Nah, I probably shouldn't make that joke. All right, I'm going to do
You know, make it on, yeah, we're Black Sheep and Bad Apples. Just fucking
it.
make
Pretty
it.
sweet way to die.
Oh,
yeah.
shit. All right, so you guys are feeling pretty good about this whole thing, right? Let's bring the whole heartwarming story that it already is, which is sarcasm, to another level.
Ooh.
We're going to talk about the cleanup.
I mean, it's already 5 stories.
With all hands on deck, it took a total of 87,000 man hours to clean.
Oh, wow.
So I did the math. And with roughly like 200 to 300 people there, I did the math with 300, I'm pretty sure. If you divide it by how many hours per week, they probably worked about 20 to 30 hours per week for about a week and a half in order to get just the functional amount of this shit going. Yeah. And the fucking work was backbreaking, as we're going to see from this History Today article. Quote, fire department pumps groaned as they removed thousands of gallons of molasses from cellars. Workers used chisels, brooms, and saws to break up the hardening gunk. The harbor water used to flush the streets clean was brown until the summer. Meanwhile, rescue workers, sightseers, and residents carried the gooey brown residents on their clothes and boots to other parts of the city, making streetcar seats, trolley platforms, and public phones sticky. The whole city smelled of molasses, end quote.
So would that be like back in the day where you know, like some classic thing, like husband wants to call his girlfriend from the payphone, and he comes back and she's like, were you calling her? And he's like, no, I wasn't. You're lying. How do you know? And there's like a molasses ring on his ear and his mouth that he doesn't know because the phone was like,
numbers have molasses on
his
them.
fingers got molasses on them from
And
the
she's
payphone.
like, I found this number in your pants when I was doing laundry, because it's the 1919.
Yeah.
He had like step through a bunch of molasses to get there, and by the time he gets there, he doesn't realize his condom's stuck to his leg.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. That would be the worst. Imagine being that guy during this whole thing where, like, the worst thing to happen to you was your wife left you, and not because you were covered in molasses, almost died, endangering yourself and, you know, your family's, you know, but because your condom that you threw away from you got stuck in the wave of molasses as it flowed into you and got stuck to your leg.
Oh, it's full circle of life right there.
And, you know, it's 1919. I doubt they have condoms.
They do, but they're just like,
I'm just
they're burlap.
Yeah. And so it took several long weeks to rid the north end of the invading black mass. They originally tried using fresh water to clean off the molasses, but found it slow and time-consuming. And with a stroke of genius, someone thought to pump the water from the harbor. And so the water, with diffused minerals, including salt, was used as a sort of like pressure washer. The salt was very effective at stripping away the sugars. And so somebody was like, well, if we're going to pay money to use all this municipal water, there's an ocean and a bay right there. Why don't we just... And it turned out that was
full
the
of
most...
molasses.
Well, no. It wasn't at the time that they started.
Oh,
When they were done, though, the whole harbor, for like a couple weeks, might have even been like a couple months, but don't quote me on that.
So
it was just brown.
More or less,
How delicious are those fish?
So more or less, they like took
They're
a bunch
dead.
of the harbor water to spray off all the molasses, and it all just ran down to the harbor.
Yeah.
They were like, oh wait, that's downhill.
And they're like, wait a minute. What
Do
if we
fish
use
like-
downhill water
Yeah.
to make downhill? Yeah, so using ocean water, firefighters sprayed down the street and buildings with their hoses, trying to get the streets clean as they also looked for survivors or victims so as to get a final reports of just all the damage caused. After a long rescue mission and cleanup, the final victim of the disaster was found. As we mentioned earlier, it took about 4 months to find the final missing person. Having been swept away into the harbor by the dark onslaught, Cesar Nicolo was pulled from the water underneath the nearby commercial wharf and was officially pronounced the final death of the Molasses Flood. As everybody searched, rescued, and cleaned, and took assessment of all the damages, it was clear that a lot of destruction was caused by the flash flood. At the end, it was estimated nearly $100 million worth of damage was done in today's value. With houses collapsed, several buildings destroyed, 21 dead, and 150 injured, the sticky mess that was slowly cleaned up led itself to another sticky mess.
Dun dun dun.
People were fucking mad.
Why?
Oh, yeah.
Why?
This is the legal proceeding part of the episode.
Yeah,
They
because
learned how to make sugar daddies. They shouldn't be too far.
Turns out sugar daddy is a Boston thing.
Yeah.
Sugar baby,
It's-
Chicago. We don't.
It came from us taking pens and sticking it in gravel where molasses was and just sucking on it.
So, something funny about this whole thing is that actually in Canada, during the winter, Canadians will take like literally like a stick or a spoon or something like that, and take maple syrup, either from the tree or from like the stuff that they've gathered, and they'll just pour the maple syrup onto snow, like fresh snow.
Oh yeah, that's delicious.
And then they'll stick their spoon or fork or you know whatever onto it, and then they'll just roll up all of this stuff into a tasty little treat that they sit there and munch on.
That's what I'm thinking when it hits the ocean, like maybe like at some point you get that salty sweet kind of flavor at the right kind of like
I was thinking the fishing was probably like delicatessen at that moment, where it was like, yo, we got all this like molasses fed fish in the harbor right now, like
fish.
I don't know if there's crab. Is there crab around there?
I mean, fuck, I don't know.
That's why I'm like a bunch of like sweet crab. It's like I'm sure some restaurant
I was
floor
just
chef that
picturing-
was like, yeah, let me get your fish. It's all this molasses fish.
And I was just picturing dudes going surfing, like, because it's a bay, from what I understand. I don't know East Coast geography, so forgive me, listeners, if I'm wrong. But
I
there's a
do,
bay.
and it's just like California.
Well, and what I'm saying is, like, it's a bay, and all this molasses is going out back into the ocean. So imagine being a surfer, like, a couple of cities away, and not understanding why you keep getting fucking sticky while surfing. And it's just, like, 4 straight months of this.
Hey, Bobby, I've been wearing this wetsuit for 3 days because it's just stuck to the hair on my chest.
I imagine whoever had to clean boats was just pissed. You know, it's like the rookie job. And they're like, yeah, go scrub the boat. And he's like, dude, seriously.
Plenty
All
of people just,
boats
like,
are,
doused with gasoline and lit it on fire.
Dyed brown.
Yeah. So with so many dead and injured and all the property damage, not to mention the sickly sweet smells that emanated, reminding survivors of the tragedy, people wanted to know what the fuck had happened. They wanted to know why their lives were turned upside down. Was it a mistake? Was it intentional? People, when they're angry, want a fall guy. Someone who will take the blame, play the bad guy, and suffer for the mistakes of, or in this case, the mistakes of themselves, or in this case, the company.
But they're usually very rational about that, right?
They are.
Yeah.
And this is where we're getting into the fun part of the story. Because I thought the flood was the most exciting part of this story. No, it was after the flood.
The judicial flood that's about to happen on this guy's ass.
So the sticky hardened mess that was left for Boston to clean up was done within a couple of weeks. However, the legal mess had just begun. It took 6 goddamn years to finalize the lawsuits involved in the disaster. Now, mind you, it takes 6 years for us to do something now, but like this was back in the day when they weren't exactly flooded with so much fucking legal processes. So the people of Boston's North End were furious at the malfeasance of the organization in charge of such a large mess. They were furious and they were hurt, some physically, others emotionally, over the issue. And as the flood of sugar that swept through Boston was cleaned up, the new fucking deluge came flooding in. All of the goddamn lawsuits. The owners of the tank, the United States Industrial Alcohol Company, and its subsidiary, Purity Distilling Company, ended up with 125 lawsuits filed against them. And in the case of Just Door versus the United States Industrial Alcohol, the lawsuit was filed on behalf of 119 of these victims. And as usual and predictable, the court process was fucking drawn out. The argument was that the USIAC had created and barely maintained an unsafe, quickly built, shoddy-ass storage tank, and as such was liable for the damages created. But the United States Industrial Alcohol Company's response for why the tank broke was the exact same reason that Shaggy had in his hit song during the early 2000s. It wasn't me.
Boombastic?
No, it wasn't me.
Oh, the other one.
Yeah, the other good one. Yeah, the reason USIAC's official stance had been complete innocence was basically because of something that they wanted the whole world to know. This was terrorism. You see, the anti-immigration sentiment in the early 1900s had been very strong, very much unlike today. We don't have that at all
Boston
today.
is always progressive.
Exactly. And even though society, like the society at large, began to cool down from the heated engagement of World War II, which was just a couple of years before, the Red Scare was fucking haunting everybody's lives at this point. There was communists everywhere, and their spies and saboteurs were on the prowl. So the United States Industrial Alcohol Company had claimed very strongly that it was radical Italian anarchists who caused the tank to fail.
Oh, Super Mario.
Their argument was that somebody had went up to the tank and just planted a bomb. Therefore, they should be acquitted of any charges, as they had no hand in the wrongdoing that was the deluge of sugar.
Oh, hey, I just found this bomb in this plant, and if I just plant it on this molasses tank, I will finally get against the government that's really fucking me over here.
So the lawyer hired on behalf of USIAC, Henry Dolan, was adamant about his client's innocence, stating that there was no way that the tank could have opened without outside force. And here's a quote from him in HistoryNewsNetwork.com about the disaster. Quote, "We know beyond question..." I don't know why I'm doing a... Anyway.
Lyndon B. Johnson voice?
Yeah, exactly. "We know beyond question that the tank was not weak. We know that an examination was made of the outside of the base of the structure a few minutes before its collapse. We know, and our experts feel satisfied, that there was no fermentation because the molasses was not of sufficient temperature to ferment." And this is a quote within a quote. We're ending the end quote. Dolan concluded that, quoting Dolan, "there was no structural weakness, and that something from the outside opened up the tank." The interesting thing about this is that the day of the flood, Andrew Peters, the mayor of Boston, described the event as having been caused by an explosion. Standing shin deep in molasses just a few short hours after the flood, with little to no investigative evidence, Mayor Peters said this, quote, "Boston is appalled at the terrible accident that occurred here today. An occurrence of this kind must not and cannot pass without a rigid investigation to determine the cause of the explosion, not only to prevent such an occurrence of such a rightful accident, but also to place the responsibility where it belongs. Such an investigation has been instituted this afternoon by Corporation Counsel at my direction." End quote. And sabotage, to be honest, wasn't entirely an unfounded idea. There had been many bombings by a lot of different anarchists, and a lot of these people targeted the USIA facilities in like New York, and for a few short years, or they targeted that for a few short years, and then in Boston, there was also a lot of radical anarchists there around like the 1919s, and so it's not a theory that is unfounded.
Yeah, but it doesn't sound like they needed a bomb.
It really doesn't, and we're gonna get into that in the legal documents. But yeah, like a part of it is like provide the evidence for that. What was the Italian anarchist group in the area called? Is there any evidence? Is there any intelligence that you can provide for this?
The absence of evidence is not evidence.
Yeah, well, it's not the evidence of absence, but it's like it's hard to make a claim about something without the evidence. You can't prove a negative, but you can prove a positive.
Yeah.
You know, I can't prove you weren't there, but I can prove you were there.
Yes.
Maybe. I don't know. Whatever. But there were other theories.
Traveling, going to weird places and seeing bad things happen.
That's just drugs. But there were other theories about how the flood occurred, and they popped up just fucking left and right. And most of them were just charging the USIAC with overfilling their tanks. And a reason behind this theory was that the day after the tank collapsed, coincidentally, was the day Prohibition was ratified by Congress.
Oh.
Given a 1-year grace period, manufacturers, vendors, and consumers could wean off the hard stuff during that time before Prohibition went into full effect, meaning the company stood to make a lot of money in that year if they could produce more alcohol. This theory, however, was shut down with the fact that USIA didn't make alcohol to consume like rum, but they made industrial alcohol, which was legal and used for wartime stuff.
Okay.
I want to posit an opinion.
Okay, go ahead.
They were still making ethyl alcohol, which is the kind of alcohol you can get drunk off of. So I want to posit that maybe they were just siphoning off some of their...
Well, didn't you say the tank was built built by the alcohol. What was the name?
Yeah,
of it?
the United States Industrial Alcohol Company.
Okay, the United States Industrial Alcohol Company builds a ginormous tank
It's fucking
that's
huge.
supposed to that was tested with water, something very similarly in weight to alcohol, before selling it to a company that was
Ooh.
going to use it for molasses right before Prohibition ended.
Interesting
So maybe they
theory.
were already just set up to have a vat ready for alcohol, and they're like, yeah, get some cheap ass molasses. We know what do. They'll bring some ships in. It's right by the harbor. And then what we'll do as soon as this fucking law changes, we've got the tank that we can fill full of alcohol and barley and all this other shit, and then we can boom,
It's
we
the
can
world's
profit.
biggest keg.
And unfortunately, the tank didn't make it through because they got a little too ambitious, type of deal. That's my conspiracy on it.
Now, I think it was they knew Boston was going to be this like progressive like mecca, and they needed to slow down everything that was happening in there. So they just pumped molasses into everything.
They being the
Ambiguous they.
Yeah,
Okay.
those guys.
the Illuminati triangle over the eye.
Yeah, the one who's looking through that like square.
Hell yeah, dude! Illuminati, if you're listening, go ahead and sponsor us. We'd love to.
Imagine Illuminati, but everyone's llamas.
Illuminati sounds so
Right,
cute. Somebody should make a TV show about that. If you're listening, make a TV show about that.
Yeah, copyright.
So the class action lawsuit gained a just absolute shitload of legal momentum.
How do you get a class action lawsuit at that point? Like, how do you not have one of those commercials that like get
This
everyone with like
Old
lung
school
cancer
commercial.
together?
There was like
Yeah.
guys standing on the corner on a soapbox. They were like, "If you or a loved one have been injured by the molasses flood of 1919,
That's really-
call Chuck Bauer, LLC, attorney at law."
This was the first actual. This is one of the first cases that could actually provide that kind of evidentiary, like class action lawsuits.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this is one of the first cases of people actually going to court and suing a company and proving in court by Door versus the United States Industrial Alcohol Company, which we're gonna get to.
Is there an
by
Aaron
proving that
Brockovich
they're
of this
actually
story?
liable for the damages that they caused by owning a company. This is one of the first cases of that.
That's badass.
It's pretty cool. And so this class action lawsuit was gaining momentum. The survivors and the families of those who died, which were mostly poor Italian and Irish laborers, again, very racist at the time, claimed that the company was responsible for the loss of life, damaged property, and lost wages. They argued that they deserved compensation for their loss and suffering. And the evidence upon which the plaintiff's case relied was more than 3,000 witness statements and 45,000 pages of testimony and arguments.
I couldn't imagine that.
As
Blocks
discuss-
surrounding, we're like, yeah, I saw the molasses go. That was crazy. And they're like, well, we can't deny that shit.
Yeah, and as we discussed, like at the top of the episode, the plaintiffs, the victims of this, they brought evidence pointing to how the tank was made and who helped to make it.
There's got to be like so many of you like, yeah, dude, it was fucking crazy.
I mean, it's Boston, of course there was that. So we're gonna talk about this guy right now, named Arthur Gell.
When are we getting a Mark Wahlberg?
What do you mean? On the
He's
podcast?
in every Boston story. I just figured he was going to be one of the people that saved the day.
I figured he was one of the firefighters.
This isn't a movie
Or one
by
of the people
Michael
on the
Bay.
boat. No, this is not by Michael Bay.
Oh,
all.
okay. Never mind. All right.
So Arthur Gell, and I want to emphasize his name is Arthur, shitty fucking first name. Last name Jell-O. No, it's not, but it's Jell.
Well, you see.
Yeah. So Arthur Gell was an up-and-comer at the United States Industrial Alcohol Company. For a long time, he had worked in distilling companies, starting his first job at the age of 14 when he got hired as an office boy at the Hiram Walker and Sons Distillery.
More
which
alcohol stuff. That's all.
Well, and I think Hiram Walker still makes whiskey. Don't quote me on it.
Ooh,
but Hear 'em sounds familiar. I didn't look it up, so don't quote me on it.
I like Johnny Walker.
That's how I was
But
gonna say,
anyway.
Walker, yeah.
Arthur Gell had spent some time doing clerical work since he had been working at Hear 'em Walker and Sons. After 16, which is actually 17 years of hard work, Gell was hired as the secretary a few years after being promoted to treasurer at Purity Distilling Company. If you've forgotten, the subsidiary of United States Industrial Alcohol Company.
Hell yeah.
That's when Arthur, being the treasurer, was given the project to build the tank. By fucking dangling a promotion and ideas of moving to the headquarters in fancy old New York, Mr. Gell put in some fucking hard work to get that tank built. He didn't really. First of all, they had to find the place to build the tank, though. And the perfect place sat at 539 Commercial Street. The the Boston Elevated Railroad Company owned the property, however, so Gell went and began negotiations. The negotiations were long and arduous as they had to discuss the massive construction that would have to occur on the property. This included a 220-foot underground pipe to bring the molasses in with auxiliary tanks, more vessels for the wharf so the boats could come unload, and this was not even to mention the goddamn 5-story fucking tank. After months and months of negotiations, after months and months of telling his boss that he was right there on the edge, after months and months that finally turned into a year, September 15th, a year and 9 months of negotiations later, also legal processes and the signing of a 20-year lease, all of that came to a close, and Boston Elevated property, that was theirs. With the property secured in September, the goal was to complete the construction of everything by December 15th. The issue with the lease was that it started on November 1st. So this gave him more or less about 6 weeks to construct this tank, this underground fucking pipeline. There was a pump house that I didn't even mention.
And they did.
They fucking did.
No, they kind of.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, like, to the degree of what we're talking, yeah, not saying that it was sound standard and stuff like that, but the fact that they've 6 weeks, a month and a half, they were like, and now we're going to fill, all right, go, team, go. 2.5 million gallon tank plus piping plus this out to the harbor, all this other stuff on that. And you're like, I mean,
And that's why it makes sense that it goes in from the bottom, because it's probably like a hard pipe that goes all the way out to the harbor.
just hooks up to the boat.
And honestly, it sounds, I'm not sure, but the base of the tank, from what I understood about the description of it, was concrete. And so underneath that concrete was where that pipe came in from the bottom. And so that's why it sounds like it had a lot of hard time, because it's like literally trying to pump however million gallons of molasses up as it's trying to load up the tank. It's pretty weird. I don't know why they did it. It's fucking weird.
Oh, they did it because they were the age of industry, and
they
whatever
really were.
they believe could work.
And this is how Gell's kind of story goes. So Gell had 6 months to do this thing, but he couldn't do it with the men he was given. There was no way somebody could do this in 6 weeks rather, with the resources he had. So, thankfully for his potential promotion, he asked his boss for more men and more money, and the boss agreed. More men were sent in, and they began the process of creating this fucking monstrosity. So as December 15th approached rapidly, and in the final days of the project, as said earlier in the episode, the last thing to do after building the tank was to fill it and test it. Joe, however, couldn't spend the days upon weeks it might take to fill the tank with water. And he also couldn't afford to pay the municipal water company for 2.5 million gallons of water in order to properly test the tank. Instead, Arthur Gell, being our boy, decided to fill it with 6 inches of water, enough to get it to the first angle joint, which was sufficient in deciding the sturdiness of the tank.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And the tank, unsurprisingly, held.
Yeah.
That's my favorite part of the story.
Oh yeah.
So,
all right, we can afford like 1,000 gallons. Just throw it in there. If it leaks out, then let's work on it. If it's good, we're good. What's the first 6 inches versus the next 15 meters?
Yeah, and something that's really interesting about this too is that he didn't actually consult any engineers in the building of this. He just consulted like metal workers.
Yeah.
And he was like, I want you to build this thing. And they were like, all right, is it going to hold? And he was like, I want you to build this thing. And that's kind of how Arthur Gell's story goes.
I'm a good welder.
Yeah.
This sounds very similar to things that are happening right now.
Doesn't it's
Fukushima.
It's reminiscent of something, but I can't put my finger on it. But a little more than 2 weeks after the tank was just finally built, erected, and tested, 700,000 gallons of molasses came in from the Cuban distilling company, and business began at 539 Commercial Street. And as stated earlier, it leaked profusely. When approached by alarmed employees about the leaks, Gell's final solution was to paint it brown so that the leaks wouldn't be noticeable.
Sound logic, yeah.
You lose a little bit, you know. We're talking about 2.5 million gallons. Like, what's a few gallons?
What's
on the
a couple of thousand gallons dripping down?
hire
The kids
the guy
will love
to
it.
sweep it up. Like, the kids will love it. Whatever.
He's basically giving to the poor with those leaks. So you want him to not give to the poor?
And that's why it makes me think that like maybe there was some other like kind of alcohol distribution thing going on here. Is because
there's definitely some moonshine stills like around that area that were just like there's one like I bet you in the janitor's closet right away, like right down the road from there. Like,
well, like
they got washed away with a flood, and he was very upset about it.
Well, and like everybody can just collect molasses from this thing again. So it's just weird to me that like if Arthur Gell wasn't making money on the side for doing this job and peddling alcohol, he's a fucking loser. I mean, he's a loser regardless, but we're going to get to that. So, all of Arthur's loserishness and all of the problems that had come from this company and their tank and their malfeasance, all of this came to light during the litigation process. In the end, the judge spent a goddamn year looking over the evidence before issuing his conclusion. He found that USIA couldn't provide hard evidence that a radical Italian anarchist had planted a bomb, because there was no fucking evidence of a bomb. And with heavily documented evidence from the plaintiffs about how nobody with engineering skill designed the tank, and the victims and survivors, there was so many people that were like, no, it definitely wasn't a bomb. The judge eventually found that USIA had been at fault for the flood, and the courts found them liable for all damages. Ultimately, the USIA paid out more than $600,000 in out-of-court settlements in 1919's money. Ooh. That's the equivalent of around like $9 million of today's monies. Ooh. And it's reported that the survivors of those killed were given around $7,000 for their loss. And since then, the area has been modernized into a park with a baseball field sitting on it. And the area of Boston has rebuilt since then, and near where the tank once stood is a plaque to remember the event in North End, Boston.
Sweet ass park.
That would be a great name for it, but no.
Nice.
Yeah. So it's a happy story. It ends pretty good.
Oh, it was sweet throughout.
Hey, fella. So how are you guys feeling? You guys feeling good?
I want to taste horse marinated in molasses.
That's your only takeaway.
I've been thinking about that this entire time.
Yeah, it sounds sweet.
Yeah, I think it'd be good.
I'm into it. And it was honestly hard to write this thing for me because every time I wanted to be like, and then the giant wave of molasses, like you got to be creative about it. So I got like dark tide, the dark looking treacle. There's a couple of other like metaphors or like descriptions that I used rather for the thing, but this was actually a hard story to write because there's how many times can you write molasses flood?
3.
That was quick.
Yeah. I was thinking about it the whole time. I was like, you better
say,
not
how
get
many
to
times
3.
did you say it?
I'm not gonna.
But then, never mind. The drowning and the like. I'm still just trying to picture like the worst death ever is like.
It's
you're like, it's so sweet and delicious, and I'm dying.
Yeah, and
Like,
it's like the La
your
Brea.
ears, your nose.
Again, it's like the La
like-
Brea tar pits, you know? Like, that's what it reminds me of, but you can eat it. But you're not
So
going
you
to
gotta-
feel better from it. You're just
Yeah,
going to get
you got to
jittery
get
and
like
crash.
a couple seconds longer than the like tar pits.
Mhm.
It's one like gulp into your stomach, and then the next one's into your lungs.
Yeah, exactly. That's what
And
I'm
that's
like. You're definitely
even
getting like you're like,
scarier.
oh, this ain't so bad, and I'm drowning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So,
sugar, like, wow.
so post episode, what do you guys think of the Great Boston Molasses Flood?
I'm also wondering if there was a local baker shop like within.
Oh, when they
a
were
few
out there
blo-
just getting
Oh,
buckets
and they
of
were
it.
just like,
Coughing his
fuck yeah. They were like
donuts.
right out of the flood range where it didn't damage to the shop. but
Come
they're-
get your Boston Flood donuts.
Yeah.
Chocolate
And-
real molasses from the Boston Flood.
We
He
got
had this like really kind of like non-sweet cream, and then the molasses came in and mixed with this like weird like kind of stale cream, and then he injected it into his donuts.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then put a little bit of a chocolate glaze on
We
there,
got your
and-
maple bars here, your maple bars, and like, dude, John, I don't know if that's cool. Too soon. He's like,
Yeah.
but I'm making a killing.
Well, and also think about how many, because what I did not read about was how many people with buckets ended up showing up out there. Because if you can make fucking some alcohol out of rum, or out of molasses rather, imagine how many people, having heard that prohibition is around the corner from Congress, were out there just getting buckets of it, dude.
I was
Oh,
also
yeah.
thinking like the kids that used to go lick the tank. Like all the neighborhood kids are like, yeah, there's devastation everywhere, and maybe you find a hand or a body
Years
or
later,
something.
they're just licking
but
it,
you're
though.
over there just like it's, you know, you're just as a kid, you're just like, oh my god, 2 square blocks of like sugar, and you just run around like everything just.
And then just for months afterwards, just licking the bricks. Like there's a little bit of sweet left on that. Like,
Yeah, I mean, not after the fire department comes through with the sea salt hose, but
sea salt.
or it's,
I mean,
ocean water rather.
I
sorry.
mean that's still that's a salt and sweet,
Sweet. It's like
flavor.
pineapple on pizza.
Yeah, there's something.
That's why I'm
there.
like, kind of thinking of like, I say tires, but I don't know what the major transportation was on those streets.
Well, interestingly enough, at the time it was kind of like in the transition of like horse-drawn carriages and automobiles, which
and,
is something
yeah.
you can note in the destruction. Like,
Okay,
they
that's
destroyed
what
a
I
lot
was
of those.
thinking was like they still had some carriages and stuff going on, but there was also like Model Ts and like early automobiles going on. So I
Yeah.
just imagine like the tires on the street. You know, like the first few cars or whatever that went through there are just like, how does that affect the rubber with the salt and the sugar and stuff? You know, early tires aren't built like they are today and
Yeah.
stuff. So I'm like,
I mean,
how many cars went through there and like made a couple runs, and now the tires are like, they drove through that block, parked their car, and a week later their tires are literally rotting out or something like that. You
That's
know?
why what was funny to me is that, like, you know, as I was saying earlier, like the story would be funny if it wasn't tragic. And a part of the funny part of the story is that like people were walking in and out, and as they were like walking out of this, they were just like leaving these like trails of fucking sugar as they walked, and it was getting into nurse's hair and like all over the walls, and like everything smelled like this for fucking weeks.
That's what I was kind of imagining. Is
Well-
like there's got to be some upstairs like apartment couple that with like a very like the girlfriend or the wife is very yeah
fresh is getting fresh.
is very suspicious of cheating or something like that, and she's like, did you go over and see where'd you go today? And he like lies about it, but there's like literally like molasses
there's
footprints all the way over to the neighbor's place or something like that. And it's like, I know you've seen whoever, you know.
Yeah, and that that particularly cracks me up because like I don't know much about Boston's North End in 1919. There could have been hookers. That scenario could have played out.
I'm sure that. Oh yeah.
Oh, some
Can
sweet
you imagine?
tricks?
Sorry,
Can
sorry.
you imagine
Sex
the
workers,
yeah.
not hookers.
Can you
Sweet
imagine
tricks,
the
man.
brothel on the block because it was an industrial neighborhood? So I'm sure they had a house where they sold alcohol and women, for that matter.
I
and
mean,
stuff. So
after the flood, probably alcohol,
Yeah.
molasses, and women.
yeah, exactly. That's why I'm like, oh, come over. It's like I'm sure there was like one guy that was like, yeah, come on down to Sticky's, where you know, and like had some like stupid catchphrase or whatever
Yeah.
for his
Oh my
saloon brothel.
All the cups are made of molasses. So, do you guys have any final thoughts before we close this piece out?
I'm more just happy that I know where Kool-Aid came from. The Kool-Aid Man.
Yeah. Well, that's
Is he a villain or a hero? I think we described villain earlier. He's like the villain of.
A little bit of both.
yeah.
It
Well,
depends
most-
on who you are.
He
Most
was the
villains start out as heroes. Like they
Yeah.
saved a child or a cat in a tree, and then they like their girlfriend betrayed them, and so now they're like out to kill the world or something like
Yeah.
that.
well, and it's just interesting to think that the first super mutant was the Kool-Aid Man created by the Boston Flood.
I bet you I know what happened. Kool-Aid Man's girlfriend died in the molasses
Oh,
thing,
shit.
and now he's like, no, and now he's like, he's got this vengeance. Now.
Or he's like,
God
oh
damn.
yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, in regards to that, I just want to let you listeners know that if you see the molasses and or Kool-Aid Man, run. Just run. Sean, any final thoughts before I close this bitch out?
I was just thinking, if you haven't watched the video, make sure you go back and play that video on the Boston Molasses Flood.
Yeah, the fluid dynamics. It's really interesting, and it applies a lot of like current science to something that happened 101 years ago.
Yep.
Yeah, it's good stuff, and it really helped me kind of like discover why everything happened the way that it did in this.
You know what
story.
I find kind of funny? Final conclusion is sugar factories were also a very dangerous area.
high risk, yeah.
Yeah, high risk area, and it seems like it's always something to do with sugar. Some guys built a tank to put molasses in, sugar, and that liquid sugar, if you will, and it fails. And then there's a bunch of sugar factories like plot in the middle of like buildings and everything else in these old times, where then somebody smoked a cigarette in the sugar factory, caught on fire, like exploded and caught blocks on fire. And it seems like back in the day, maybe we got over that problem, that sugar was a problem in America. And let me relate that. It still is a problem.
Yeah, very much
But
is.
it used to
We
be a
just
very
regulated
like
it.
monetary, physical, like industrial problem, and now it's just a health problem, if you will, and stuff like that. But
there's still, there's slaves making sugar, and I don't know about molasses production, but I get, at work, as I said earlier, like 275 gallon tanks of it, and that creates a mess. So
blood sugar.
It sounds like blood sugar, honestly. Yeah, and
You wonder how many Oompa Loompas like died throughout the construction of the Willy Wonka
Jesus
factory.
Christ.
It's always there, man. You just gotta look.
And I'm going to leave this episode with something we might have talked about on air, but we definitely talked about during one of the breaks. Imagine how if this story was based around like the Willy Wonka factory, it'd be delicious. A fucking flood of molasses. Like that's exactly what you would expect. That's probably what their sugar river is made of. I haven't seen it since I was a kid. Chocolate river. Yeah, it's probably what their chocolate river is made of. So
chocolate is better than molasses, and molasses river is gross.
So I guess the moral of the story is that 2.3 million gallons of molasses could potentially be a good thing, as long as it's happening within context. So I think that's the end point. We're gonna
everything in moderation.
reach on this story. Thank you, Mr. Dacey, for being here.
Oh, you're welcome.
Listening to me do history lessons.
I really like a classroom when I could just like sit and just drink and smoke and learn something.
Yeah.
High school had it really wrong.
And we've been smoking a lot of weed, so it's been particularly fun. Mr. Fourth Corner music producer dude, thank you so much for hosting this thing. I'm glad you...
Who am I hosting it?
No, you're hosting...
Co-hosting.
The studio.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like the other host.
The other kind of hosting.
Yeah, if
I'm the host
Lauren was
of the
a
show.
vampire,
Gotcha.
he would only be able to come in here if you like let him in.
Well, and I would
True.
further that by saying, imagine that I was a vampire DJ asking to do a dance or a rave at your venue. So I'm the host of the thing, but you're the host of the venue itself.
So garlic still applies.
No. Nothing garlic. We'll talk about that off air.
Okay.
And so, as you guys know, I am Lauren O'Brien. Thank you guys for listening to my recreation of the Boston Molasses Flood of 1919. You've been listening to Black Sheep and Bad Apples, where we often like to say, fuck Hobo Johnson
Yeah,
for
that's
various
I'd
reasons.
fuck
But
Hobo
mostly because
Johnson.
he's a piece of shit. Again, I'm your host. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you enjoyed. We'll be back next week with some Mother Jones. Peace.
Bye-bye.